Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, I've made a prediction tier list. I'm going to be anticipating which specializations are going to be cooked and absolutely destroyed by the NERFED hammer of Blizzard, and then which specializations have the possibility to rise up from the ashes of those destroyed classes and possibly take over. Now, Blizzard has outlined a schedule and a game plan of when class tuning is going to occur. The first major round of changes is supposed to come in on Tuesday, but we don't know what those changes are going to be yet. Likely they're going to be announced today or tomorrow. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on what those changes are, I basically relay them here on the channel in real time as they come out. So hit the subscribe button, and then we're going to be able to see and confirm if this tier list is accurate or not, because this is a prediction. I'm going to be using some, based on patterns in the past of specializations, where they're currently performing in the game as a whole, and which ones can't really be nerfed. Some specs might seem strong, but there might be something about them that you really can't nerf, and they're probably still going to be good no matter what happens. So let's get started here. So Affliction Warlock. This specialization is underperforming in PvE outside of like Seed of Corruption situations, and even there, Demonology is outperforming. So given the fact that I think Mythic Plus and Raiding is their predominant focus at the moment for this, I think PvP is a consideration, but the predominant focus will be PvE. So I expect Affliction will get buffed, and then probably what it will be is Affliction gets buffed for PvE, and they'll be like, you know what, it's weak in PvP, so we'll just let those buffs go through as well. Now, what do they buff exactly on it could determine if those buffs in PvP actually matter or not, because in PvP at the moment, the main drawback is that Unstable Affliction can be dispelled very easily. Dark Harvest is very easy to disrupt. It has a huge amount of ramp and management with global cooldowns at the moment, and I don't know if any of those PvE changes will actually target those specific PvP issues. So if it doesn't get PvP specific tuning, and it's really just numbers moving around to rebalance its damage output in PvE, it might not end up too good. So I think like best case scenario is probably that it just stays the same after this, or a small buff. Maybe small buff is the frame here, but I don't think it's going to become the new meta. To become the new meta, I think Affliction would need a much more significant overhaul in PvP mechanically. It just has too much. It's trying to do too much. It's got 2 dots that stack, and its spender stacks, and it also has a channeled ability that is like an AoE cooldown, which then means that your normal dots can't do any damage. So it's like, it's kind of in this cooked place at the moment, at least for PvP, in my view, to where, any number tuning is like, maybe, yeah, if you buff the giga crap out of the dots that they just absolutely mow people down, then yeah, it could become the new meta. But I think mechanically it's still going to have some issues. I also think we're in a burst meta where healing is very high, and you need burst damage, and AF just doesn't have that. So I'm kind of leaning more that it's probably just going to stay the same. Arcane Mage. This might come as a surprise, but Arcane is overperforming in PvE, so I think it's going to get nerfed. Now, whether or not they translate those nerfs into PvP, in the past they have been. Throughout the beta, they have been bringing those nerfs forward, but they've been bringing so many of them forward, and I think a lot of people consider now Arcane to be the worst of the 3 mage specializations, that I don't think that they're going to carry them into PvP. I think that they'll likely add some type of PvP modifier onto them. Again, they're probably going to target the Barrage build, because that's the main thing that's dominating in Mythic Plus. I kind of expect Arcane will just be where it is and won't get any real significant kind of like PvP new tuning adjustments. Arms Warrior, this is a big one. Everybody wants to know like what's going on with this one, right? So Arms Warrior is underperforming in the whole game, but they keep nerfing you. So what's the heck's going on? Every patch, nerf, and it's just like, what? We're still nerfing you guys. So it's like, I kind of want to put you here, because I feel like they, like, sometimes this happens. It's in the past they've said like, we think it's time for Demonology Warlock to suck. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes they just take a spec and they're like, you guys get to suck, or they take a spec and like, you get to be the king, type of deal. So I don't know if that's what's going on with Arms Warrior. If they're just like, this is just like, nope, we're gonna make it, we're gonna cook it, and then something else is gonna get the the spot that Arms was previously getting. Now, obviously in PvP, it just needs numbers, right? Although you still do have issues like Affliction mechanically as far as getting uptime and that type of deal. So will numbers be enough? I think they could. So I'm gonna lean on the side of you probably at least feel like a small buff by the end of this, but it really just depends on if they've decided whether or not they hate you and they want Arms Warrior to be bad. So this is me leaning more optimistically and not leaning heavily optimistically to go into new meta, but I don't think that you're going to be done. So I think Arms Warrior will likely feel like it gets a small buff by the end of this. Assassination Rogue, I think it's doing actually decently well in PvE from what I've seen. So it's probably not going to see a huge amount of tuning. But at the same time, PvEers are complaining about the same thing PvPers are complaining about, which is energy regeneration. So once you've like gone through your little burst window and you tank out on energy, you just feel like you can't recover it. It also has issues versus subtlety with vanishes. It just can run out, and then you run out of vanishes and you run out of energy and you're just like running around auto attacking, can't do too much. But if you can manage to win fast, it feels strong in that window. I kind of think it'll end up feeling the same. I don't know if they're going to actually be able to, or want to maybe change how their energy works. It's supposed to be like this energy pooling and venom thing, and if that's how they view it and that's how it's going to be, then I feel like it's probably just going to stay where it is, which isn't terrible, but subtlety is definitely taking the cake on overall performance. Augmentation Evoker, I actually think could end up getting a small nerf, but they might counteract it in PvP, because in PvP I think it's not too great, but in PvE I've seen a lot of Augs doing really well, so I actually could see it getting a small nerf that they try and counteract. And I feel like there's so much on the table right now as far as like what do they want to do? Like, are they just going to do small tweaks and counteract them in PvP, or is PvP going to get like this big dedicated tuning adjustment? Because they have to make some big choices. Like, are they okay with the current gameplay of cooldowns are very strong, damage outside of cooldowns not so strong? Are they okay with that? Because it's kind of how it is at the moment, and I don't think that was the intended goal. Or is there just not enough time, and so it's just going to be number tuning? I feel like we're going to be able to get a lot of information based on the changes that they make with this most recent round. For me, I'm leaning on the conservative side of things, right? Because as a company, they've made posts saying like we don't work overtime anymore, blah blah blah, right? So I'm kind of leaning on the side that maybe they don't have a lot of time. So I could see AUG end up just getting small nerfed, or at best stays the same. But it was already kind of just not good. But in PvE, it's good. So like maybe it just ends up staying the same. Blood DK, I definitely think will end up getting a small buff. It's the lowest performing tank in Mythic Plus. Now, it really depends on their stance on tanks, because there's been a lot of social media discussion about like tanks ruining world PvP and all this stuff, and otherwise been a pretty good experience overall, but the tanks have been kind of ruining it. So maybe if they've received that feedback and observed that maybe they actually come down on this, even though it'll probably get buffed for PvE, and then they'll nerf all the tanks or something in PvP. But again, it depends. Like, is that something they're considering as a serious issue, or are they kind of okay with the tanks just being, running around doing whatever in world PvP? That's kind of where we got to go. Guardian Druid, unfortunately, I think we're done, bro. I wanted to play Guardian Druid in PvE. I wanted to do the Delve challenge, but like we are overperforming in there. I think they're likely going to target Raze on the Druid of the Claw build. It just does so much damage if you get lucky procs with it. I also think they should consider targeting Frenzied Regeneration, at least in PvP, because during Incarnation you get infinite charges of it. So it's like you can't die. You're just infinitely healing to full. You got passive proccing heals. Like the healing output on it is egregious. Even when you get the instant regrowth, they can literally top people. It's like lay on hands. You get 3 charges of them. So I feel like Guardian Druid's probably going to get cooked because it's so good in PvE, and it's so observably good in PvP. Like usually when things are getting this much like social media attention on top of statistical data, you're probably cooked. But I'm sure a lot of people are probably happy about that. I just hope it doesn't get cooked that much in PvE. I'm okay with it getting cooked in PvP, but I'm just hoping it doesn't get totally cooked in PvE. Beastmastery Hunter, this is a harder one for me as to what direction I think that it's going to go. I probably expect that it's just going to stay the same, because it's just seems like it's just in a good spot, at least in PvP. But in PvE, I have a little bit less data on this one, so it could be small nerf, but I feel like they'll probably counteract it to keep it where it's. Maybe it could be a small nerf. It really just depends on how good it's been doing in PvE, but I'm going to lean into stays the same. It's going to be really fun to like go over the changes that they make and then look at this and see if I was right at all in terms of trying to like get a pulse on like what they're thinking, what's the plan, what's the direction here. Brewmaster, I could see you guys being done as well. You guys are just the same. You guys are both top tier performing in Mythic Plus, and this guy's not getting a lot of attention in World PvP because everybody just likes being a bear, but like it's just as good. So I feel like Brew could either be small nerf or you're done. Depends again if they're deciding that this season is the Brewmaster season and they're going to leave it be a little bit overtuned from other tanks or not. It really just depends. But I'm kind of leaning into the you're done side of things here. I think that this could be a bit more knee-jerk reaction based, just based on the statistical data that I think is coming through from how good these guys are performing. Feral Druid, I could see getting a small buff. I think it's underperforming in PvE. So it could end up getting a little bit of a tweak, which would be really good for it. So like, honestly, Honestly, maybe I should leave it here as new meta because it has a lot of good stuns, a lot of good off healing, durable, and bear form. It's really just missing a little bit of tuning. And because I think it's underperforming in PvE, it could get buffed to the point where it actually becomes the new meta. I think this is the first bold take I'm going to take as far as new meta. Boomkin, I think it's not doing terribly, but not doing the best in PvE. So I don't know where they're going to want to go with that, if they're going to buff it or not. I kind of just expect it's going to stay the same, which is good. Like you kind of want to stay in the same position that you're in. You're in a really good spot. Devourer, Demon Hunter. This is one where it depends on how much time do they have tuning versus PvP and PvE. I don't think they're really going to change it for PvE, but in PvP they've been doing these kind of like weekly adjustments on taking the damage out of your burst and bringing it into your sustainabilities, which I think is really good, but it's still kind of sitting in a spot where the burst damage is the predominant factor to deciding the outcome of matches. So maybe they keep doing that, but I kind of think it's probably just going to stay the same with where it is. Which is, it's good in uncoordinated PvP environments, but like rated 3s, I think it'd be unlikely to see a Devourer Demon Hunter. So I'm thinking stay the same as a safe spot. A Demo Lock, I think you guys are cooked. You guys are absolutely destroyed in PvE. Now, the thing that's destroyed in PvE is a hero talent passive on the Soul Harvester tree. So if they target that, which I mean, I can't imagine them not targeting that, you might be able to just switch to Diabolist and still be A-okay in PvP. So there is that, but I don't know if they'll nerf you beyond that. So I don't know if I should leave you in the you're done tier for PvP, mostly because I think you're still good on durability, you're still good on crowd control, and I think that nerfing that passive in Soul Harvester is probably not going to be huge in PvP. So maybe you'll feel like you got a small nerf in PvP. In PvE, I think you're done. If this is a PvE tier list, I'd put you in done, but I think in PvP it might not be that huge. Also, you have the benefit of being like one of the best counters into sub rogue, and we'll talk about where I think sub rogue is going to be when we get to it here in the future, which could give you an edge. So I think small nerf is probably more fair. Destruction Warlock, I think is probably just going to stay the same, which is good. You're in a good spot. You definitely want to stay the same. I think it's probably not going to move too much. Devastation Evoker, this is a hard one. I think you're doing okay in PvE. Like maybe you get like some type of small nerf in PvE, and maybe they transfer it over into PvP. I could honestly see like maybe a tiny nerf coming in with the Devastation Evoker just because of the PvE tuning and where it's sitting as far as overall damage output in PvP a lot of the times. I could see it. Maybe Boomkin honestly could be on small nerf window as well. On like overall damage or something like that, but possibly, but maybe nothing. Discipline Priest, I think you're definitely going to get something. I would think that they're not okay with like healers doing significantly more damage in matches than DPS. I would think that they're not. I think that that's probably one of the main focuses that PvP is likely going to have, is readjusting those healer damage buffs that they made during the beta, likely to make leveling more smooth, and now trying to iron those out for when the rated season starts. So I could see Disc getting some type of small nerf towards its damage, related to its atonement in that regard. Elemental Shaman, I feel like you guys are doing good in PvE, so you're probably not going to get a buff there. I feel like they're just going to leave you where you are, which is not great. I think you're probably just going to stay the same. Now, maybe everything else shifting around you can help you out, but I don't know. I think you're just kind of stay the same. But it kind of sucks because you're just like an Ascendance bot, and you just pop Ascendance trying one shot, and then you're kind of useless. And that's what I meant by like, I don't know how much time or how much they're okay with it just being the cooldown trading gameplay that we've kind of come to expect for the past few expansions, or if they really did want to achieve that goal of sustained damage is meaningful, and they're going to make major adjustments. That's the one thing I don't know, and I won't know until we see the tuning when it actually comes out. Enhancement Shaman, I think it's probably going to stay the same as well. It seems like Totemic's doing really well. This could actually be the sleeper one, where I don't know if it'll become the new meta. Maybe. The thing is it could become the new meta, not even because of balance changes. I'm seeing a lot of people starting to pick it up, and it's actually looking kind of sleeper. I actually, it could go somewhere. There's potential here for it, but I think the safe answer is to say that it probably just stays the same, which is a decent spot, not terrible. But I could see Enhance. I'm going to regret not putting Enhance here in the future. Just watch. Frost Decay, I think usually does well in Mythic Plus, so maybe it's not going to get a lot of buffs. But again, it's like Ellie. It's like you pop a Reaper's Mark, you one shot, and then you're not doing anything. So you can make it work, but I think you're probably just going to stay the same. It depends on if they have the time to go in and readjust those damage profiles out of the enhance is the same way with Ascendants and Doomwinds, and they did do it in the beta. It just seems like it's not enough, right? It's like one of those things where you got to tweak it for a couple of weeks by a little bit, because if you overshoot it, then they're dominating everybody. If you undershoot it, the cooldown's still too important. Like, it requires a little bit more consistency to actually get into position. But I think I'm taking a more conservative approach of as far as expecting where things are going to go. Fire Mage, I could definitely see getting nerfed, not because of PvE, but because of PvP. I think the combustion burst window, usually like these heavy burst things in PvP in early stage do get targeted. So I honestly, I kind of wonder if Enhance would end up getting nerfed. You know, I'm actually going to shift my viewpoint here, because these guys do a lot of burst damage. I could randomly see you guys getting a small nerf. Maybe it gets compensated. It needs to get compensated for you to be viable, so you stay the same. If it doesn't, you'll feel like you got a small nerf. I'm leaning more into small nerf territory, because they do target classes that have heavy one-shots pretty often in early stages of an expansion. Frost Mage, I think this is another one where they could nerf your Ray of Frost. But again, they'd have to buff everything else. So it's like a lot of these classes, one spell does all the damage, and then everything else is kind of meh. So if they nerf the one spell and buff everything else, great. Game will feel really awesome. This is where like it's a pivotal moment for PvP as far as long-term fun, because I think eventually when people realize like the cooldowns and how powerful they are and where they scope in and what's your win percent when you don't have the cooldown, it's going to feel more boring as time goes on. Whereas if damage just feels good all of the time, it feels a little bit more like random, which feels fun because you can just get things going without needing that specific window. But I could end up seeing Frost getting a small nerf. Fury, I think, just stays the same. I think it's okay in PvE, even despite all the warrior hate or whatever. Fury's doing fine there. You'll still probably struggle again with mages, hunters, and Ellies. It's hard to move. Demon, this is the hardest one. I don't know where to expect, because right now I don't think you're doing too great in PvP. But I don't know how you're doing in PvE if you would get a buff or a nerf over there. Exactly. I don't think it's doing insanely well. I think maybe it's towards the higher end, so you might end up even getting nerfed. But I feel like Havoc needs like a bit like a tune-up in PvP. So like maybe if they're aware of that, I could see it getting a small buff. But if they think that it's okay, or then you'll just feel the same, which I think won't be too hot. Holy Priest, I don't really expect to change. I think it'll probably be the same spot. It's Holy Priest, unlike the other healers, doesn't have like an egregious amount of damage output that I think will get targeted, and its healing output just feels good where it's at, so it'll probably just be the same. I could see Holy Pally getting a small nerf. I think particularly Hammer of Wrath, because again, it's a big hard-hitting burst attack. Those are things they usually do target at the beginning of an expansion, and you have that, so you probably get nerfed. I think Marksman Hunter will also probably get, I need to move these next to the range. Marksman will probably get a nerf too, just because of the burst that it has, unless they're okay with it. It really just depends. If they're okay with the cooldown burst one-shot stuff, kind of similar to the War Within, maybe not as bad, but still very similar gameplay wise. I think it could. Mistweaver, I think you might be done. Just because you do really good burst damage, insane overall. I've seen Mistweavers topping damage meters in Battlegrounds, like, and the healing output's really high, and a lot of people re-rolled to it, and everybody's talking about it. Like, you're not in the best spot, I think, for avoiding nerfs. But in PvE, you're not very good. So like this would be them having to do PvP specific stuff with no PvE implications. I don't know if that will happen on this round of tuning or if it will happen on the next one, because obviously they have not a lot of like rated PvP data. So this, honestly, like this round of tuning could be very shallow for PvP, and we'll have to wait until the following week, which is the final adjustments, where they actually have a week of PvP rated data, and then we see like that's maybe where, like maybe this week it only gets a small nerf because it is just so obviously positioned well. But then next, if it continues to be good, maybe they hit it really hard. Maybe this round, maybe they won't cook anything down to the ground this week, but then next week it could. Outlaw Rogue, I don't think it's doing insanely well. Like I could see you maybe getting a small buff, but I kind of feel like it's probably not going to get anything. This may be a small buff. Preservation Evoker, this is a hard one because this guy is all over the place. This guy is the best raid healer, the worst Mythic Plus healer, and then kind of just a mid-level PvP healer. So like, where are you going to go with this? Like, I don't play Preservation enough to understand the mechanics fully of why. I think like the double charge Dream Breath is probably some significance in raid with how many targets you can hit and stuff like that, possibly. But in PvP, main issue is that Subtlety Rogue is just really good and it's hard countered you forever. So if Subtlety Rogue somehow just falls off, I think could end up being really good. But then obviously the other healer's damage is outshining you. But if that gets nerfed, you could do better. So I think you'll end up in like a small buff position where you end up a little bit better just indirectly. Even if Prez doesn't get any PvP tuning, the other healer damage getting nerfed will be a buff to you. Because that's the thing that you used to offer, was that you did significant damage, and now these guys just do way more than you, so you feel just inferior. I think that's the case. Prot Warrior, I don't think it's going to get touched, if I had to guess at least, for PvP. Because again, are they concerned with the Prot Warrior, with the tuning, with everything that's going on and everything they're trying to get done, because they've given the schedule and like only this tuning adjustment dates, and they're probably not going to tune it again. So it's like, I don't know if it's really on the radar. Prot Paladin is actually annoyingly good as a second healer. I could see them nerfing the Divine Hammer or is it Hammer of Light from Templar. It's too many different hammers and too many different lights with Prot. I could end up seeing it just stays the same, which hopefully means it just flies under the radar because I think it's annoying, or a small nerf. So I think it probably just stays the same. I feel like it's probably not on the radar. I think the things, at least for this tuning adjustment, that'll be on the radar are things that are like social media trending, obvious statistical data towards the top, big one-shots. I think that type of stuff, healers doing more damage to DPS, like the really big, like obvious stuff, I think is probably what will happen on this first round of tuning. And then they'll wait the following week to get actual rated PvP data. And then I think that's probably where they'll come in. Restoration Druid, you guys are so unlucky because you're really good at Mythic Plus and you're not that good in PvP. So like you keep getting nerfed and then they don't counteract the nerf in PvP and then you get weaker and you get weaker. I don't know, again, like some specs, they just randomly select and they end up being the best, or they end up being the worst the whole season, just based on arbitrary vibe seemingly. And then other times, maybe this was just, they thought it should get nerfed in PvP because it was doing a little too well there, and then, it actually went a little bit too far. I kind of think it'll probably just stay the same for now. And I think a Resto Druid shift would probably happen after this week, if it's really locked in as like an underperformer. But you'll probably feel better just because these guys get nerfed, if I had to guess. So maybe stays the same, or maybe small buff just because of other people getting weaker, like Prez. Retribution Paladin, I definitely think it's some type of nerf towards Divine Hammer. The spinny boys just do a lot of damage at one shot. It's one of those situations where it's like one of those big one shot obvious things that they usually target at the beginning of a season. Restoration Shaman, if you guys don't get buffs, I feel really bad for you. I don't know if it's going to be new meta though. The healer tuning is really volatile right now as far as like what to expect, because right now Shaman is very low. It just doesn't add any damage. It's very slow, has to hard cast a lot more compared to every other healer. I think it's like you should at least get a small buff. I just don't know if it's going to shift much this week. We'll have to kind of wait and see. Shadow Priest, I think probably stays the same, or a small nerf, but you don't really have a one shot. So I think because you don't have a one shot, you'll probably just go kind of unnoticed on this round of tuning. Subtlety Rogue, I definitely expect a small nerf at least. But this one's really tricky because the main reason this is strong is because of the 16-second diminishing return change that they've made, and the access to how many cheap shots that it has relative to Outlaw and relative to Assassination. Assassination and Outlaw kind of run out of stuns, where Subtlety never runs out because of a talent that resets their cheap shot whenever they vanish or they dance. So they can stun whenever they want every 16 seconds. So if they nerf their damage, which has been overperforming PvE, I think it could end up getting PvE damage nerf that they'll translate over. I don't know if they'll target Black Powder or some AoE that doesn't matter in PvP though. But if they target the damage and nerf your damage, you're just a stun bot, you could still be viable because no class can stun as much as you, and you just pair yourself up with a ranged DPS that does all the damage, and you're still viable. So that's why I think it could end up being a small nerf, but you're still viable. Whereas if they go after the stuns, that could potentially have a lot more damage, but it's very tricky how you'd have to go after the stuns to make that happen without completely destroying you, like identity wise, like what people expect from sub. So this one's honestly, it's in a tricky spot. You're in a good spot to like maybe just still be good, because like working around it's going to be really tough. I'm actually very curious to see how they go about this. If it's just surface level, like, yep, we're bringing their damage down, and then they just become a stun bot for their ranged DPS, and that's kind of how they've been for a while, is just a stun bot support spec. Or if they bring the frequency of the stuns down and then you keep your damage high so you can do damage the whole time, because sub's been having a weird identity crisis where they seems like they want to shift it more to doing damage more often rather than just bursting in little windows. But at the same time, then the rogue community gets upset by that because they like being that. So I don't know. You could end up being really good. Survival Hunter, I could end up seeing a small nerf. It just does a lot of damage still with Boomstick, and like those burst windows likely do get nerfed. I could end up seeing it getting a tiny nerf. Unholy DK, you guys know your history as Unholy DKs. Like, you guys always get sledgehammered at the first part of it. However, last season in the War Within felt like they picked you to be the spec that, like, no, we're going to let them be strong. So if you guys are still the chosen spec, I don't think you're going to get huge nerfs. Legitimately. Now, you are excelling in PvE, so you probably get some small nerf there, like we did previously, which was like your dots, which didn't really end up mattering that much in PvP. So if they do that again, you'll probably just feel the same. So this one is just completely riding on whether or not you're still the chosen spec to be the god ones. You know, like, think about like the Ret Apocalypse patch where everybody played Ret and it was like, what's going on? Why isn't Ret getting nerfed? Sometimes specs just get chosen, and you might still be chosen, but you spent so long as the nerf bat target, the guy that Blizzard just immediately went to, like, your DK's good, ain't gonna happen. You know, you guys were that guy for a long time, so you probably have some trauma built up from that. I still have like some indirect trauma built up from that to feel bad for you, that I kind of want to put you on the you're done tier up here, but I don't think it's gonna be up there. I think at worst it's like a small nerf right now. I think you guys are still kind of the chosen spec at the moment, based on vibes, but we'll see. Like, if they sledgehammer you, you guys ain't the chosen one anymore. So then this is a prediction. I'm not going to be right or dead on this on every single one. This is just me using logic to try and guess the frequency here, so you can be like, okay, which specs are like, should I prepare an alt? Like, what should I do? And like, how high risk is it? You know what I mean? It's not guaranteed. This could be totally wrong. Maybe Feral Druid ends up getting cooked and it's you're done. We don't know. This is just my best shot at it, kind of just for fun. Vengeance, I don't think, again, they're probably going to give too much time to a lot of the tanks, except getting maybe nerfs towards the more egregious ones. And then Windwalker, I could see maybe a small nerf just because it does so much damage with Fist. I could see maybe a tiny nerf there, but I don't think it's excelling too much in PvE, so maybe it gets nothing again. But because it has that big burst damage, depending on if they want to target those big burst cooldowns, like a lot of these guys in this window, right? They've got really big burst cooldowns or a singular ability, whereas these guys maybe don't have that high burst range. So I think that they might Devourer might get maybe a little bit nerf on the burst, and they probably should do like another round of tuning towards Collapsing Star and then putting more damage into Consume and things like that. And maybe they will. We'll have to wait and see. Again, this is just my vibes right now, using the PvE tuning that I'm aware of, applying that to the history of the changes that they made through so far, and then trying to base it on how much time do they have for this and what's the priority for this first round of tuning, because there will be a second round. Priority for this first round of tuning, I think, is geared towards Race to World first. It's geared towards PvE because they actually have data for that now, and they do have data for PvP, but it's mostly random BGs. So from the random BGs, it's probably like the most egregious stuff, the one shots. Healy's doing more damage than DPS. I feel like that stuff is like obvious stuff, and then it just really depends on like how much time are they going to allocate, because a lot of these guys are just cooldowns where it's like they pop the cooldown, they're very scary, then they fall off the face of the earth. And I thought that we were trying to move away from that gameplay. So if they are still on track for achieving that goal, we could see a massive shift. If they're kind of just like, well, the game is fun, people like it, and we got to work on the next thing, then maybe we don't see that. But this is just where I'm currently sitting, the vibes that I'm getting. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's just more of a fun one. And I will see you guys in the next one.